There's always going to be someone that's prettier. There's always going to be someone smarter. There's always going to be someone more interesting. And that's okay, because you are you. And it goes back again to coming back to yourself and to celebrate that human being, And for me, for so long, it was like me self-abandoning by going, that girl's prettier than me, or that girl is so smart, incredible. But instead of being like, amazing, I can't wait to meet that girl too, it's kind of like we compare ourselves and we continue down that road where we think less of ourselves. And it's just not worth it.
Welcome to the Legendary Podcast, an invitation into intimate, soul-bearing conversations with the gods and goddesses of our Burning Man camp, the legendary playground of the gods. Here, you'll meet the visionaries, wisdom keepers, heart-centered entrepreneurs, and edge walkers who make up this extraordinary soul family. Together, we'll journey through the turning points that shaped us, the failures, the victories, the breakdowns, and the breakthroughs, and what it truly means to rise and build something sacred from the ashes. If you've been searching for your people, if you've longed to find a community that inspires you to rise, you found your tribe. So join us now for another sacred journey. Welcome to the playground of the gods. Welcome to Legendary. Hello, Legendary fam. This is Celine DaCosta, your guide and host for today's journey. And I'm super excited today to interview the one and only Traci Osborn. We're going to be diving into her story, who she is, what lights her up. So, Traci, first of all, welcome.
Thank you.
I'm super excited to have you on. And will you share with us who are listening? Who are you? Who is Traci Osborn, and what's lighting you up in life the most right now?
Well, I'm a stay-at-home mom. I also used to paint quite frequently, and I've taken that up. And so I am starting a new painting series right now. So that's really lighting me up. I also am married to David Osborn, and which I think you had on before.
Yes.
And yeah, we have 2 kids. So we have a 9-year-old and a 16-year-old, which their ages are kind of allowing me to dive back into me. And so that's been the most amazing thing lately that I've been doing. Yeah. Basically
Beautiful.
trying to remember who I am. So.
And amazing. And I want to dive into all of that. You know, something really strange when you said that you painted. You know how right before I pressed record, I was sharing with you. I was like, oh, you can share what you're up to. And I almost wanted to say, like, if you're painting stuff or you're writing. And I literally was about to like make a joke about painting and be like, oh, maybe you're painting. And then you're actually painting. So it's in your field. Gosh, I did not know. See, this is what I love. And for everyone who's listening, what I freaking love is that I get to interview Traci for the first time. And so because of that, I get to be delighted by who you are in real time, like on record. And I'm sure that whatever is making me be like, whoa, I did not know about this. I have no doubt that anyone who doesn't know you is going to be listening or knows you a little bit, or even who's met you at camp is going to be like, wait, Traci, what? Wait, so tell me more. I want to go through each one of these things. Tell me more about painting. Like, what got you into painting and your painting series? What is it all about?
So, it's really funny because I didn't really paint or do anything until kind of my senior year in high school. Really fell in love with it. Went to school for graphic design. My dad was like, you're not going to make any money painting. You really need to do something that actually will make you money. So I went into graphic design, and I ended up doing graphic design for landscape developers. So I have a degree in landscape architecture and also in graphic design. And so I used to do land graphics, so that sort of thing. Fast forward after that life, basically, had kids and really got back into painting. And when I started doing more work on myself and doing therapy, like solo therapy, solo journey sort of deal, I started painting to make sense of what I was learning about myself. So I would do a session, and then I would paint because it kind of relaxed my mind and my body. And when I viewed it, it would be more meaningful to me. So I would do that for myself. And now at Burning Man, actually this year, I had a friend. Actually, I think you had him on too, Leor.
Mhm.
Leor was
Yeah.
telling me, he was like, you should do a series, make it a commitment, try and have some pieces done, hang them for your birthday, and celebrate yourself by doing that for yourself. So I was like, okay, I'm going to do this. So I took some portrait classes online because I had painted before, had gone to several different drawing painting classes in college and that sort of thing, but never really gone into portraiture. So I did that. And now I'm starting a series and it's all about conscious awarenesses. And so each one will be a something that I've learned about myself or that David has learned about himself or anyone that I've met. And I really love tarot. So I wanted to kind of base it on symbolism and on tarot itself. So it kind of looks like a tarot card. Each one will look like a tarot card, but it will be based on an awareness.
I have it right next to me. I don't usually bring them with me for this session. I just I just knew. Oh, by the way, who's listening and not watching the video, I pulled out a deck of tarot cards that are literally sitting right next to me as my totem as I was speaking to Traci because, spirit said so. Love it.
Yeah, so the piece that I'm starting with right now is a man, which is funny because most of the ones that I sketched out are women. But the first one that I'm having is a man, and it's a man who's kind of on his knees tying a net, but the net is coming from within himself. So it's creating safety within. So that's the first awareness I'm going with. And
Wow.
hopefully I'm going to have at least 5 pieces done by April, which is when my
Mhm.
birthday is. So I'm going to hopefully have that done, hang them, and celebrate with my friends and myself and yeah, make that happen.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing. Multiple times as you were speaking right now, I just had full body goosebumps because I can feel just from your share the depth that you bring to these paintings and how much of your own learning and embodied lived experience you're infusing into your art, even not having seen it, which now I'm super curious to do.
I'll have to send you some.
And yeah, yes, please do. And something that came up for me, the first round of goosies that I got as you were speaking was when you said, I started to paint to make sense of my experience. And I'm in the process right now of completing my manuscript for a book, which David actually so kindly put a praise for. And in the introduction of my book, and I'll have to send you the pages, I literally said something along the lines of, I had to write so I could make sense of my experience.
Mhm.
And in this moment that you shared what you're doing with painting, I had this just deep realization. Wow. I mean, this is going to sound obvious, but just to reiterate it, that's what art
Mhm.
is this way of, when we have so much going on inside us and the internal doesn't make sense and we don't know how to make sense of it. Art is how we get to create order and some sort of sense through it all. And so it's such a beautiful way to turn the chaos inside into something that's beautiful and that other people can feel inspired and work from. And so I really resonated with that share when you're saying about painting. A really, really cool way of putting it.
Yeah, thank you. It really was. It was almost kind of like my therapist would say, "Okay, this is your homework. I want you to really like write down blah blah blah," and I would be like, I'm not a writer. I do journal quite frequently, but this artwork has really been something that allows me to express me. And whenever I look at it, it just reminds me. It reminds me of the lessons that I'm learning and continually learning and evolving and changing into. And so it's been beautiful. It's been very healing. Yeah.
Mhm. Beautiful. Thank you. And, there's something that you shared couple of times now that I love for us to dive deeper into because, you started by sharing that now that you have your kids at their, 9 and 16 ages, it's giving you some more space and time for you to remember who you are and for you to explore yourself. And even in these short minutes speaking to you, it's become very clear and apparent how important your self development, your work is to you, and how important your, creating and reinventing the identity and coming back to yourself is. And I would love to hear, if we were to double click on that, what does it mean to you when you say to come back to yourself? Like, what does that actually mean? And can you share a bit with us about your journey? Because I'm guessing that if you felt you're feeling like you've needed to come back to yourself, there was a moment where you felt like you were a little lost from yourself. And I've heard, you're the mom, so you can share, but from my mom's sisters, they tell me that sometimes that can just happens when we have kids and get very, we're so taking care of them that we disconnect from what matters to us. So I would love to hear your unique journey around this if you'd love to share.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, definitely for all the moms out there for sure. I mean, routine begets routine, and then you kind of forget that light, that creativity, that what lights you up. And I think for almost anyone that goes to Burning Man, we all know that the playa provides not only what we want, but what we need. And it was very powerful this year for both David and I. I think it kind of our relationship kind of really came to a head. We've been together, by the way, this year is 24 years. So we have been together half my lifetime and definitely almost all of my adult life. So, there are things that happen in a long-term relationship when you stay that way. It's definitely not because of the lack of love, but there are things that happen that just come to a head. And I think you forget who you are because at such a young age, I found that you self-abandon, right? I mean, I know Gabor Mate always says that when you're a child, you need two things. You need authenticity and attachment, but you'll forego authenticity because you want attachment, because you need to survive. And so if your parent doesn't want to, really emphasizes things that you do, you're going to change who you are. You're going to forget certain things, abandon people please, or you're going to not be too much because you're trying to get attachment. And so I think when you're in a long-term relationship, that works, right? That works, that self-abandonment. Oh, I'm going to do and I'm going to please. But then resentment starts to build and you start seeing that person through that filter. And after a while, those filters build up so much that they're not even there anymore. And so it's kind of like healing your heart through cleaning the mirror or breaking the filters. So it's kind of coming back to yourself and all the ways that you self abandoned since you were a child and being aware of that and being so aware of it that you're feeling all the feelings that come up so deeply that you feel the feelings, let go of the story, and heal from there and move just slightly back to yourself. It's just like remembering who you were instead of living from this place where that you've created because you wanted love and you wanted connection. But just to kind of remember you're already all those things. You don't need to do anything. So it's me on this path and David too, David on this path of just, you know, coming back, coming back home. And it's been a very, very hard journey. You can imagine, because once you don't get to this place nicely and softly, it's not a soft landing. We are in an amazing spot right now, but to get there took a lot of heartbreak. I think it took a lot of, you know, facing things that you wanted to place over there. Relationship is not out there. It's not if they would or if they wouldn't do, everything would be fine. I mean, you want to think that, but in actuality, it's like, how do I view myself? How do I view that person? And that's the quality of the relationship. The quality of relationship is from that perspective because codependency happens so easily because we self abandon. And then we want to say, if you would just do this, I would feel safe. I would feel loved. I would feel heard. I would feel seen. Because that's not just, it's not the reality, you know? It's the work that we do on ourselves, and it's where we are and how we view ourselves and how we come back to ourselves. That really is the quality of that relationship.
Mhm.
So
Mhm.
it's time and time again what lights me up, not what's going on over there. It's what is happening within me, not what's happening over there. And it's hard patterns to break. That it's this kind of us taking space and going, I'm rooting for you. You can do this. You can remember who you are, and so can I. I can remember who I am. And because the world deserves us, you know? So that's kind of where I'm at. And that's why I'm
Mhm.
painting again. And that's why I'm just being aware. Just being aware takes so much. It's like a
Mhm.
full-time job right now. It feels like to be
Mhm.
aware, to understand, to give myself grace. Yeah. And to feel all those feelings that come up. It's incredible. I hope that
Thank
makes sense.
you. There's so much gold that just came out of that share, and I wanna reiterate it. The first thing that you shared that really touched me is that we sacrifice our authenticity for attachment, and it would make complete sense to me that not just you, but, oh my gosh, how many women and men in the
Yes.
world are giving themselves up in relationship, either intentionally sacrificing or even, subconsciously, like, not even realizing that they're doing it, which makes it even harder to catch. But how many people in the world are consistently giving themselves away without actually having formed a clear, strong identity of who they are, and it's so hard to maintain ourselves, and it's easy to lose ourselves when we haven't actually, like, stabilized that, what I call in my work, I call it the internal architecture within. It needs to be
Mm,
strong and very clear for us to be able to interface with other humans and retain ourselves in it, especially our partner. That is going to inevitably, like, the nature of partnership is that we become two and then one and then two and then one. So I love that share. And the other thing you said that really touched me was clean the mirror and break the filters. That was very memorable, because it's not just about, yeah, it's like breaking down those belief systems and rewiring and then continuing to clean and clean and clean and clean so you can come back to that place of love. And
yeah.
something else that you shared that really also touched me was, and I'm gonna look at, just literally as I was walking home to come to this interview, I screenshotted a quote, and it completely reminds me of what you're sharing. So I'm gonna share it with you if that's okay.
Love it.
So the quote is, the ego says, if it hurts, cover it up. Run from it. Numb it with addictions. Avoid it at all costs. The soul says, if it hurts, then as hard as it is, turn towards it, see it, be present with it. Give it your love and compassion, for you cannot cut off a part of yourself and feel whole.
Mm.
Yeah.
Totally. Totally. You know, you
Yeah.
just have to love all part, I don't know what most people do. I know David is kind of a people pleaser, and so he goes in that direction, but I am "Oh, you're too much," you know, I don't for me, it was like getting angry, and it's like, it's such a vicious cycle to go, "Oh, you can't get angry, you hurt people," or whatever happens, and it's just like, I won't shame myself anymore, coming back
Mhm.
to that loving all parts of yourself. It's so funny. I was just watching, my son and I were doing trunk or treats, and we were prepping for that. And we were watching a movie at the same time, and we were watching Inside Out 2. And in there is kind of like, at the very, very end, it's kind of like, can we like break all these things where we're putting all the bad stuff into the back of our mind, right? We're throwing all the things that we kind of will put all the good stuff in the front, but throw all the bad stuff to the back of the mind. And at the end, she's like letting it all come. And it's because we're all those things, and loving
Mhm.
every single part of ourselves, no matter what shows up, is coming back. It's like, okay, it's okay if you're, you know, it's like your quote. It's like the things that you feel like, oh, I want to hide that. It's like, no, it's part of you. It's okay.
Mhm,
Everybody has those hidden things that you just don't want other people to see. But until you just
mhm,
like, this is me, love me or
mhm,
not, it's the same for me. It's like loving
mhm.
all parts of myself. So,
Yeah, thank you. When earlier today, usually when I have a podcast guest, what I'll do is the day before I set an intention and I kinda, like, feel them. I'm, like, with them, on the in the astral levels. I'm just, like, hanging out with them in the astrals, just so when we come into actual physical conversation, we can have a more, like, real conversation. And, I was just, like, making my breakfast this morning. I was thinking about you, and I'm like, "Man, Tracy, she is like a strong woman. She's strong, like strong." And then I'm like, as I'm making my breakfast, I'm like, and I bet you she's really sweet.
I don't know how
I
to
feel, I feel like she's really sweet. And I had this feeling, and I was like, yeah. And I'm telling you why it's coming up for me right now is because you know, you you're basically sharing in very broad strokes that make that I can my job is to watch people and to, like, read the details, right? And even in the things you didn't say, like, the strength that it takes to actually look at these parts of self and be willing to do the work and be willing to go to therapy and be willing to paint about it and be even willing to talk about it, like the struggles and the difficulties and even what you achieved with your marriage for you to be able to move through that takes a serious kind of strength, but underneath that strength, like here you are, and you're talking about coming back to love. Then we're not having a conversation, but you being like, yeah, you just gotta be strong. You gotta just do it. You roll up your sleeves and you just get it done. Like that's not actually what's underneath that conversation. What's underneath it is how do we come back to wholeness and what comes back to love. And underneath that is an entire journey that you've been on for you to become the kind of woman that can even choose that in strength and also choose love. So I want to double click on that because that's what gets me really curious about you. Because you one of the things you mentioned to me is that you met David in your 20s, right?
Mhm.
Yeah. Okay.
Yes.
So what's really curious because you keep saying to coming back to who you are, like who you are. But it sounds to me, and you let me know if I'm on track or not. But who you are doesn't sound like who you were, and let me explain this a little bit better, is in 20-something-year-old you did not know what you know today, and she was probably, you know, compromising, self-sacrificing because she knew what she knew. And so when you say, like, "I'm gonna return back to who I am," I'm not hearing like, "Well, when I was in my 20s and I, like, didn't have these issues." No, I'm hearing something else. I'm hearing that you have felt a space within you that you wanna come home to. And I'd be really curious if you can share a bit about what that is. And if you could also share about a bit about Tracy in her 20s, who she was and what did it take for you to find this place that you're speaking into now?
Yeah, what's funny is I think when most people get to kind of like my age or people talk about like midlife crisis, they talk about that. But really it's almost to me, it's like you reach a point where you're just like, I'm no longer willing to keep doing what doesn't work. And so I think
Mhm,
for a lot of people, and most people focus on a man going through this and going through a midlife crisis. And I think if you're willing to look at yourself and I will go back to that, coming back to yourself, but like remembering who you were as a child and doing the work to try and actually look at yourself, be aware, just admit to yourself where you're at. Or you can go the opposite direction and you can say, I'm going to escape, right? What you said in even your quote is like, I'm going to escape and I'm going to go buy things, or I'm going to go have sex or do addictions or go party more and try and forget more because it's still too painful to sit where I'm at. So I'm either going to do all these things and do a midlife crisis that everyone kind of thinks of when you think of midlife crisis, or you can actually sit in it and try and go back and remember. And so for me, it's going back to I hate like almost like spirit of who you were born into this world.
Mm,
And it's understanding that you are powerful in who you are and you are here to make this difference in the world and your energy makes that difference and just allowing you to be you makes such a powerful difference in the world. And so for me, to me, I'm everyone. I look at everyone and they're creative. I look at everyone and they're whole. I look at everyone and their love. And so coming back to me, coming back to not even the 20 something, going back to the kid that was running around climbing trees and, you know, laughing and caring about people is the real stuff. And knowing how whole and loved we were without having to manipulate ourselves or to people please or to do any of the things that we self-abandon. We overfunction, overfunctioning and making sure everything's okay. Can I do to prove that I'm worthy of love? But just being, kind of coming back to going, gosh, I don't need to do anything. I can just create, be my light, and that is enough.
mm,
And I actually had this experience where I was like, I really want to know on a cellular level, because I can understand what it means to be enough, right? Everyone knows, oh, you're enough, you're enough. You can say it in the mirror and blah, blah, blah. But I was like, I really want to know on a cellular level, what does it mean to be enough? And basically, I had these like spirits come to me, and it was like, you're so lucky because you're alive. So you're in this world, and just because you're breathing means you're enough. And to me, to just know that, to know that you can feel grief, you can feel cold, hot, warm, love, all the things that we feel as humans is enough. And that's it. There's not like, you're good enough, you're a great person, you're, this, that, or, you're a great writer or you're a great artist. It's not even that. It's going back to even a basic level of you're alive and that makes you enough. And that's it. So it's like coming back to that knowledge of that basic knowledge that you're whole, complete, connected, and loved. That's it.
wisdom. Yes. And it makes me curious because you said to when you will go back to the little Tracy, the little you. What would you say when you have gone back to her? What are her most endearing qualities that really make the core of the tapestry that is you?
I think I was a very curious kid. I was always outside, always run around. I was like your typical tomboy, basically, but just like curious about all the things that were happening. I climbed trees, got stuck in them, scabbed every single part of myself, and just like felt like I was alive, running around, enjoying the world. I think I was a very tough girl, didn't care what I looked like, didn't care, you know, shoes are off, you're running in the woods and on a bike or just letting the wind roll through your hair. I think it's just, yeah, I definitely
Mm,
was that kid, you know,
mhm,
and I
mhm,
loved it. I loved every part of it. So it was like just remembering joy, pure joy of just being.
mhm,
So
mhm. Thank you. Yeah, I can see her rolling around, like, with the dirty jeans.
oh, for
I She
sure.
doesn't even care. That not even noticing that they're dirty.
I think every single picture I have of myself when I was a kid, I have a scabbed, like, nose or, I cut somewhere
Oh
or something.
god.
I have this
So
from when
cute.
I went through a barbed wire fence on a motorcycle. I just
Oh,
like,
wow.
yeah, it was just kind of wild and free. And I just love that part of myself, you know?
Yeah. Well, it sounds like you still are. You're just letting it scream louder.
You're a little safer, yeah.
The unraveling. Well, it makes me wonder then, as you were going as a child and then in your 20s and then up until now, if we look at your life as like if we zoom out and look at it as a whole, what would you say what did you most have to overcome inside of yourself to go from being wild and free to self-restrained and losing and compromising yourself to coming to a place, a full circle moment, or I'm even a spiral moment where you're not only coming back to your natural essence, but you're stepping into something even greater in a sense of self-awareness and who you're here to be as a woman, as a matriarch, and everything that you're exploring in your, spiritual journey.
So I just think that, you self abandon in so many different ways. But I think the thing that makes you kind of, or had me turn the corner was, I think for so many times, I think we drink coffee in the middle of the day, or we do things that our body is screaming at us, right? Our body's screaming certain things at us. And somatically, I just think, you kind of hush that or shut that down into a point where you either have like anxiety or and I think avoidance, my husband was saying, like, even if you're an avoidant, it's almost like you're doubly anxious because you don't want to be in that situation. So you avoid. But it's kind of like listening to your body, because I think for so long I did not. It was kind of like making sense of it, making sense of it, making sense of it, until the point where your body's just like, no, I can't do this anymore. And really tuning into that. So for me to turn the corner, it almost meant like there was kind of a tragedy, like this really, like David and I was saying, this relationship can no longer continue the way it is. It's like our soul contracts are done. We've learned from each other, we've seen, and now it's time to build something else. And I think just really understanding that everybody will, because I think you hide so much, you don't want to show certain parts of yourself. You don't want to like expose these scars and these things these wounds that we have. When in reality, it's that bravery that people respond to, people relate to, people understand. And it's kind of like being so open and vulnerable with yourself to say, here I am. Yeah, I am doing that. Wow, I am being jealous. What's happening there? It's like, even just to say that, even just to look at it, even just to be aware of it is, people relate, they get it. Like, heck yeah, I do that too. Or wow, I would never want to share that, right? I would never want to share the things that happen to me or things that you're thinking or you're feeling. That's, you think it's so hard until you start doing it. And then it's just kind of like, oh, I'm doing that thing again, I'm actually comparing myself to this girl. And there's always going to be someone that's prettier. There's always going to be someone smarter. There's always going to be someone more interesting. And that's okay, because you are you. And it goes back again to coming back to yourself and to celebrate that human being. And for me, for so long, it was like me self abandoning by going, that girl's prettier than me, or that girl is so smart, like incredible. But instead, being like, amazing, I can't wait to meet that girl too. It's kind of like we compare ourselves and we continue down that road where we think less of ourselves, and it's just not worth it. You get to a point where it's just like, that's not worth it anymore. I just want to celebrate life with every person that I meet. And I want to cheer on my husband and tell him, yes, go out and do the things that you love. And me too. I want to go out and do the things I love and not worry so much about what each of us are doing to try and cut parts of ourselves off or to manipulate ourselves to make the other person love and accept us. It is really true. It is about just being comfortable with where you are, because I don't think you can make a change unless you admit to yourself where you're at and what it is that you're thinking and what it is that you're feeling. And just being like, okay, I did that. I'm just gonna admit that, and I don't really want to do that anymore.
Mhm. Mhm. Thank you. So, this crossroads that you shared with you and David, which I think a lot of people have been in relationships or are in relationships can relate to, which is that crossroads of, okay, this chapter done, complete. So either like we evolve, right? So either it ends or we evolve, but I shall know more. What did it take for you to get from that place of feeling resentful and kind of like losing yourself and abandoning and tolerating that you were doing that to yourself to getting to the place where you said, no more. This, like, I will not do this anymore. And because most people get to that place and their relationship falls apart. And I'm not saying, of course there was challenges and you guys had challenges, but you didn't just throw in the towel. You said we need to evolve. And that in itself is a code that I think a lot of people can learn from, because when we break down, normally we'll be like, well, fuck everything else too. And but you didn't do that. It's you something flipped and you said no more. And, you know, let's work on this. And it's hard, but we're gonna do it anyways. Like, can you walk us through, yeah, like what was that moment for you, that like breaking moment, and why did you decide to take this path instead of kind of like, "Eh, screw this, I'm going home, the other home."
You know, I think I would be lying to you if I said that, it's like, "Okay, we're gonna work on this and it's all gonna work out," because that's not, I read somewhere that how do you know you're on the right path? And it's like when the path disappears and you have to just give up the fact that you are working towards something, right? You're not working towards something. You're working towards something on yourself, but you don't know where that leads. And to just kind of say, like you're to that point where it was like, fuck this, I want to get out of here. I want to like leave. I don't want to have this anymore. And it's like, okay, definitely that. But it's kind of like saying I would be lying to myself if the reason I want to leave is because of you. The reason I really want to leave is because it's so uncomfortable to sit in the uncomfortableness. And I think if you can get past the point where you're like, blame, 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 it's you, and actually sit in I'm really uncomfortable with not knowing where I'm going to be. And I'm really uncomfortable with not thinking I'm in control of what I'm working towards, right? Because we're such a goal oriented society. Visualize, set your goals, do all these things in our world that I think when you kind of can sit in the unknown and that path disappears and you don't know what's going to happen and you have to have faith in the universe that they're going to bring you to your utmost highest good because it's happening. I think for me, surrendering to the idea that this is happening and it's for my highest good. And if I can sit in that spot of trust that it's all going to work out, it's all going to be fine. And no matter what happens, and it's not about making the decision to sever the ties with somebody because I don't really know what's going to happen, and to sit in that's okay. I'm just going to try and focus on me and be in a sovereign relationship with myself and my partner at some aspect because we're going to have to be in a relationship. We have children together, and I forgot to mention David has an older daughter and her wife and grandbaby, and I'm not going to let that go. So we have these, kids we have together, and then Kevin, who is David's daughter that I developed a relationship with. So it's kind of like there's a family unit that I have to think about as well. And it's not just about me sitting in uncomfortableness. I have to think about the bigger picture. And even if it doesn't work out and somehow we divorce or whatever happens, I have to know that we're friends. At most, foremost, that our kids matter in all capacities and that we're not going to be mean to each other. It doesn't matter. So, going back to just really focusing on us, how we created the relationship that we're in, how we don't want to move forward and recreate that. So the awareness is the sitting in it, sitting in that uncomfortable where you're like, yeah, screw this, I'm done. To the point of we're going to sit in this unknown until the answer actually comes to us. And we're going to do the best we can with ourselves and for each other until that comes to light. And we're sitting in that, you know? So that's what's going on.
Mhm. I love that quote. It gave me chills. How do you know you're on the right path? Because the path disappears, and that that says it all. And as you're sharing and you're sharing with us this wisdom around sitting in the unknown and being uncomfortable and being like it's okay, and this stance, this posturing that you've taken, and it has become part of you. What really sparks my curiosity is this: to be to even be in the place where you can articulate it's okay and you can have the self-awareness and emotional capacity to sit comfortably in the unknown, or to sit in the fire, so to say, and let it burn. That in itself requires an initiation to even get to that point. And I'm really curious about you, Tracy, and how did you even get to the point where you had the level of self-awareness and emotional capacity to even be able to have this conversation where you're saying, well, it's about the path and the unknown, and everything you're saying. If we trace it back,
You know,
what did it take?
it's funny because it's a very recent journey, and I really think it started right after Burning Man. I mean, I just think, we had gone to therapy, and one of the things that our therapist was saying was there was one moment where David was like handing out his hand to me and going, "Do you want to come? Oh, you don't? Okay, forget it." And it was kind of like me going, "Can you hold your hand out a little longer? Can you sit in that uncomfortableness?" For him, not people pleasing, and for me, standing for what it is that I want by asking. So we call it like, "Can you hold your hand out a little bit longer?" And I think it's just such a ongoing journey. I think, you slip back into it and you want to say, "Oh, it's them," and then you have to kind of sit in it and really feel your heart, because I think your heart really shows you the path of saying, "Be honest." Can you sit in the honesty of it? Can you sit in the uncomfortableness of it? Because that's where change happens. I think it goes back to like almost like addiction or anything like that. It's like you're trying to mask that feeling. And when you can actually just sit in it, and it will sear you the very first time you do it, it does not feel comfortable. And then it gets easier, and it becomes a little bit more easier, and it comes a little bit more easier. And it's just kind of like, it's okay, because you don't have to continue to choose that path that you're sitting in. The searing of where you're at is like, okay, that is where I was. Okay. And for people, for me, it was like, okay, I can definitely admit that when I was jealous, because I'm comparing myself and going back continually to myself and being like, wow, you're comparing yourself. Why are you doing that? Oh, that goes back to this wound of when I needed to be perfect. And it's like sitting back in that, feeling that pain of comparison, and just letting go of that story that I need to, and going back to this story where I'm complete, I'm loved, I'm whole, I'm connected, and following that. So it's like having to sit in that fire of where you were, and admitting that brings you closer and closer and closer and closer. And it's not an easy path. It's really, really difficult. If you can imagine, trying to admit to yourself and all the things you want to hide. I'm not jealous. I'm not that, I'm not that. And it's like, but you are. And that's okay because that's where you were. Where do you want to be?
Mhm.
But until you look at it, sit in it, you're there. You're still there, because you're hiding. It's not worth it. Just shine a light on it and move on, I feel like.
Mhm. Mhm. Would you say this resilience was always part of you, was always part of your character? Because you realize that not everyone will just sit in it, right?
Yeah. It is not
That it's I
an
and I hope
easy.
you realize it's very unique. It's very unique to you, what you're saying. And that's why I keep asking you, like, little questions around it because I don't know and again, for me to hold up the mirror, a lot of people might be listening to this and be like, "But how? Like, how is this like, for you, it's like, "Oh, it's hard, but, like, it's just another Tuesday making eggs for breakfast." Like, it's who you are, right? And this is what I find to be super fascinating as you're sharing is that you're like, "Yeah, it's this and it's that," and I'm like, "But Tracy, this is part of, like, your unique DNA." I mean, it's I see it's the woman who got cut up by the barbed wire while she's on her motorbike, you
You
know?
know, I think the first step is not to admit it to someone else or a room or your partner. It's just sitting in it and admitting it to yourself.
Mhm,
And if you can just sit in it with yourself and go, okay, yeah, what's underneath that? Instead of being in that whole defense mode of like, I can't believe he would say that, you know, I'm shutting him down. What the hell? And it's like, if you live there in that moment, there's nowhere to go. But if you can go, what am I really doing? And you can sit at night in your bed in the dark and admit that to yourself and see actually what it is you're doing and sit in it just in those moments in the dark with yourself. And there's movement there. There's some sort of movement rather than it being stuck and hidden. You've admitted it to yourself. And then I think it comes a little bit easier to share with your girlfriend, right? And then maybe next with your partner. It just comes these little steps of it feeling good to move instead of having that stuck energy. And I think, if you can admit to yourself in the dark in your bed, all bundled up, then it feels safer to keep doing that and more and more and more. And I think that's where I kind of started was like, girl, what's really happening here? We don't want to be here. So self talking to myself, like, come on, let's be real. Let's be honest with us.
mhm. I love that. What I'm hearing from that share is, going back to that what you said around authenticity and how we'll compromise authenticity so we can have attachment and all the resentment and all the anger and all the dense emotions that brings up for us. What I'm also hearing is that these emotions and I remember reading an article that really touched me. I don't remember who it was or what it was about, but I remember it said, "When you're willing to face your shame, you liberate yourself. You can do anything if you're willing to sit in your own shame and move through it." And I'm hearing the importance of when we have these uncomfortable feelings or when life is getting uncomfortable and just hard for reasons that it doesn't have to be that like that. The importance of slowing down and actually just sitting with ourselves, like you said, in the blanket with our blanket and our own and ask ourselves, why am I doing this? Not from a self-shaming space, but hey, what's really going on underneath the surface? Because that's where it starts. It starts with us looking at ourselves and being willing to face what it is that we see, even if it's super uncomfortable and the ego comes up and all these stories come up. And how do we just sit in the crunch of it
Yeah, because
and
I think
bring that? Yeah.
you want your partner to ask you those things, right? You want to
Mm,
react a certain way, and you want your partner to go, "Hey, this is not like you. Like, what's actually happening?" Right? And
mhm,
you're actually giving that to yourself because I mean, and all you know when you're not being you, right? You know when you are defensive or and that's the gift. I used to listen to Byron Katie and she would say, the gift is when there's like conflict, like something comes up and you're defensive. And I'm like, what in the living hell? Like, how can that be a gift? That I don't understand that at all. But now it's just kind of like, oh, I'm being defensive. What's actually underneath that? What's actually going on with me. And it's like bringing light to these little shadowy spots of ourselves that we don't accept and we don't love. And it is a gift. It is those gifts because, we're learning about ourselves. We're remembering, we're coming back, we're getting it. And it's like I love all of you, I love all of me. And and that's a beautiful spot to be, you know.
And a beautiful thing to model for your children as well.
Oh, absolutely.
Mhm.
Absolutely.
So, Tracy, I'm gonna put you on the hot spot because there's a
Oh,
question that keeps coming through for me. I'm like, well, I'm gonna ask it, and you can answer it or not answer it. What is a truth that you're still afraid to speak?
hmm. That's a hard one because I've been really coming up with just anytime something comes up, I've just been like, what are you really doing? I think for me, I think normally for most people there's a pattern of what you do. And I think for me, I think comparison has been a huge thing and it still comes up. It still comes up over and over and over again. And I think for women, it's such a huge deal, It's such a huge deal to say, "Oh, now my husband's dating a younger girl," or, all of the ads that we get. I think comparison is such a huge field for us, as well as men not being able to feel their feelings. I think that's huge in our society, but I don't really know if there's something that I'm unwilling to look at. If something comes up, I am almost all on it to go, "Ooh, I'm defensive. I can feel energy rising. What's going on?" You know? And I think I've come to that spot where I'm almost proud to say what's happening with me. And it's such a beautiful thing to go, I'm feeling jealous right now. Like I am definitely comparing myself. Jealousy comes from comparison. What am I comparing myself? It's like, gosh, just feeling that feeling of not feeling enough and that sadness that comes along with it. It just moves it. It moves it and it feels so good to move. And I think it really, really is. It was so difficult for me for so long. I can't even describe years, years and years of not wanting to admit it to me. But now I just feel like, that probably that something is keeps coming up and I can probably say that I'm dealing with that. But I think it will always be a process. It'll always be a journey. It'll always be something. I don't think we're ever done. It's not like we've landed and we're, you know, the Buddha on the mountain. I don't think we're ever like that. So I just have really, really enjoyed unraveling, like taking each layer off. And it's becoming easier and easier to just admit it, to admit what's actually happening. And it's freeing and people forgive you and they understand. And it's like going to a friend and going, wow, I judged you for so long for this. I just want to let you know. And by the way, your stuff is none of my business, and I love you exactly how you are. And I'm glad you're going through your journey. And it's continuously making these, you know, um, and admitting to what's actually happening within you. People get it, you
Mhm.
get it. You get that you hide. We all do. And so just admitting it, it may seem hard, but my God, it's like a definite connection between somebody because they get it. Um, I don't know if I really answered your question,
Well
but I really
well, I keep thinking to myself as you're speaking, I'm like, "Wow, vulnerability is one of your superpowers." That's what comes through for me,
Mm.
and I'm sure it's something that the people in your life appreciate you for.
Yeah,
It's
definitely a
less yeah.
direct human being.
Yeah, well, it creates less emotional labor for other people who have to work to figure out what it is that you actually wanna say, you know? It actually it's a form of kindness, I think, as long as we are doing it from our heart for us to be so direct that we don't need to have someone else kind of trying to decode the thing that we said because we couldn't just say it clearly, you know?
Yes, absolutely. I definitely feel like that. I mean, a lot of my friends tell me that. They're like, "Well, we never really have to think, question what you're thinking." And
Mhm.
I definitely admit when I'm like, "Wow, I had this thought of you. I just wanna let you know. I just wanna let you know that the other day I was thinking of you and I had this, like, really judgment of you. I just wanna let you know that and be open with it." And,
Yeah.
uh
Well, that actually builds trust, ironically. No, it really is. If you can trust that someone's gonna tell you what it is and they're not gonna blow smoke up your ass, you can trust them more.
Yeah, for
So
sure.
it's a great skill. It's a great leadership skill, like, amazing one. And so I'm gonna put you on the hot seat once again. What's something that you wish people knew about you that they rarely ask?
I think that I'm a very sensitive person, I may seem very, like you said, very strong, uh, brave person. I remember the other day in therapy, I was like, gosh, I remember telling myself, gosh, you're so brave. And then myself telling me back, "God, I don't want to be brave anymore. I just want to be sensitive and be held."
Sweet. I knew
I
it.
don't it's really,
You
but I don't really
you
sense,
walked yourself right into this trap.
but yeah, I
Sweet,
think I'm a very,
tender. The texture's, like, soft. Like, I don't know.
yes,
I don't know if sweet's the right word, but that what you're saying, like, squishy. I don't know.
yes.
You know
I'm
what I'm
definitely
saying?
squishy inside.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, well, it actually does not come to any surprise to me, but anyone who's listening, I hope they're like, "Oh, well, now I know." Beautiful. Well, thank you so much for sharing all of this about you, Tracy. I've learned so much. And I would love to ask you if someone's listening right now and they're at the edge of their own transformation or they're in this place like, you shared you were with David, and I'm sure you've been in other times of your life where like, ugh, it's an either make or break.
Mm.
And they're like listening to you telling them about how to sit with themselves, and they're like, okay, but I need a little bit more. Like, what would you, to that person who's listening on the edge of their seat and they're just listening to this whole conversation, what would you want them to know?
You know that it's not easy, but you're worth it. I mean, I think, you know, you being able to come back to you and to sit with yourself will only lead back to who you are. And it can feel, I mean, I've been there. It feels freaking unbearable. It feels like, your heart's going to rip out of your chest and, you're bawling and you're crying. And just to give yourself a little bit of grace, space to be in that moment, and then to say, I can do this, I can do this. I can come back to me and I'm worth it. I am worth remembering who I am. I am worth sitting in that uncomfortableness with my hand outstretched and not knowing where it's going to lead. And the path isn't there. It's going to be okay. And I think if you don't try, that's okay too. It's like wherever you are is okay, but just to remember that you're worth coming back to, you know?
Mm, yeah, I love it. You're worth coming back to. That's a serious hug to everyone listening. Oh gosh. Well, Tracy, one question I'm gonna ask that I ask in every episode, maybe you might have heard it sometimes, but I want you to just whatever comes through immediately, share. What does legendary mean to you?
I think it means freedom to be exactly who you are. And I think they allow the containment of that to be like, oh, what, and I also think whoever you are and they rise your capabilities. So whatever it is that you do well, they love to see. And I think that makes the camp so contained into, understanding who everybody is and wanting to celebrate that. I think it's incredible.
Mhm. Beautiful. Beautiful. Well, as we close up, is there one final message that you'd like to bless the listeners with?
I think, you don't have to wait. I don't think you have to wait until there's some sort of, like for us, I think there was like this, hell bent issue that came up. I think, you can sit in change without there being a dramatic problem. I think if you're willing to just really be honest with yourself, that you can make changes immediately, you know? I think
Mhm.
everybody, every relationship, every person can sit there and say, how am I lying to myself or how am I hiding myself? And just make that small change and it would make a huge difference.
Mhm. Mhm. Beautiful. Thank you so much, Tracy, for being with us today. Thank you so much for everyone who's listening. This is Celine, your host on Legendary, and we will see you in the next one. Thank you for walking with us through the fires of remembrance. If today's story stirred something in your soul, share it with a fellow god or goddess. Subscribe to Legendary for more transmissions from our tribe, and may you continue weaving your legend in love and joy. Until next time, stay sovereign, stay sacred, and make it legendary.